My name is Louie.
I'm Dan.
And this is Dead Man Walking. And we're here today to review Josh Brolin, the movie.
Because Thanos may demand your silence.
That hashtag got annoying really, really fast.
But Josh Brolin commanded my respect.
Wrong, and you should just hit yourself in the face until you change your mind.
The gold standard for dumb storytelling.
Netflix doesn't make real movies, but controversies. Marvel 2020.
Benny Doodle Cummerbund.
Good job, Luke. You did it.
What? His creepy lip!
What? I'm the new Kool-Aid Man.
Infinity War, the long-awaited culmination to the MCU. And it's a two-parter. I feel like this doesn't count as a spoiler because if you've been paying attention to the interviews, release schedule, or even the trailers themselves, it's been pretty clear they weren't going to wrap up the story in one shot, especially not when there's just so much delicious money to be made.
I mean, I don't really count this as a bad thing. It's just a thing.
I'm just getting really sick of this whole breaking one movie up into multiple chunks so we have to not only wait but pay for each individual installment.
I haven't seen the other infamous two-parters, like the Harry Potter one. I didn't finish the Harry Potter series.
Wasn't the third Hunger Games in two parts as well?
I was about to say Hunger Games. I didn't see Hunger Games at all.
And they made The Hobbit into an entire trilogy, which seems kind of retarded.
That was entirely a mistake. I was there for that train wreck. That was bad. But this film was... There's enough going on in it. I don't think it's completely absurd that was the decision made.
Spoilers.
It's a
cliffhanger.
It was the original decision to call it Part 1 and then Infinity War Part 2, but the Russo brothers have since said that the second movie is a different enough movie that they wanted to call it something else. So that we'll see if that turns out to just be an excuse to not say Part 1 and Part 2 because people are tired of that, or if
they're just trying to trick us, they're getting smart.
Or maybe they're right, and maybe the next movie is different enough. I don't know.
Now we'll say we're gonna try and do the first half relatively spoiler free, but it just seems kind of pointless because according to the box office numbers, the entire population of planet Earth went to see it this past week. I mean, why are we even doing this review? You already watched it.
There's kind of some truth to that. I mean, it's basically many will see this movie because they care about the MCU. NCO. What did I say?
This is Dan. He just got back from boot camp.
Listen, many will see Infinity War because they care about the MCU. There will be many that see the Infinity War because they are salty about the MCU. And that's the real Infinity War in my book. It's just these two groups of people going at it.
Thanos demands your silence.
Honestly, if you're not one in those two categories, you're just going to be confused and annoyed that your friends dragged you to see this movie.
Oh my word! And the memes. I think my favorite so far is the one where they Photoshop Thanos as Guy Fieri having found the Flavor Stone. Dan,
it's been 8 years that they've been teasing us this. 8 years. And so most of us have stopped caring in those 8 years because he showed up for a pretty cool bit in Guardians of the Galaxy. He kind of had that Darth Sidious role in the background.
Yeah.
But for his on-screen time, it was enough for us to be like, that guy's pretty cool. And then he never showed up again since.
So do you have a spoiler-free rundown of the film?
Oh, I absolutely
Let's get that out of the way
right here. The Avengers Infinity War follows Thanos, who is unfairly known as the Mad Titan, on his noble quest to save the known universe from squandering its resources and consuming everything. He is the only one who realizes that the only way to truly save all sentient races is a good old-fashioned mass genocide. But just like Superman can't save everyone, our plucky hero of Infinity War realizes that he and his small band of merry warriors aren't enough. Once the Avengers find out about his quest, it's a race against time to collect all the powerful Infinity Stones so that he can save not just Earth, but all life across the known universe as we know it.
Honestly, this movie would have been so cool if the whole thing had been done strictly from his perspective.
Will Thanos, our purple bro, accomplish the final galactic solution? Or will the villainous Avengers stop him?
Infinity War. Yeah, apparently infinite number of characters to keep track of, an infinite number of love interest side plots that were touched on just long enough to remind people that superheroes have emotions too, and apparently an infinite runtime. This movie was like 2.5 hours long.
I thought it was originally 2 hours and 40 minutes was the original like rumor, and it actually turned out to be less than that.
To be fair, it does do an excellent job of holding your attention. It's not a gripe. It's a long film, but they do pack a lot of stuff in there.
Yes. I mean, and it's impossible for this one film, even if it's stretched to like 4 hours long and then 90% of the action is cut out, to develop all of these characters into people we care about. There's just way too many.
There's too many. Like, it got to the point where, like, I didn't feel anything for this film. Too many characters competing for my attention. I just stopped caring.
Well, it's an interesting, I think, departure from what the last two Avengers movies were, because Joss Whedon put a lot of effort into making them more standalone. Pretty much every Marvel film up until Civil War, actually, were things that somebody who had never seen any of the other movies could feasibly watch and enjoy. This breaks that completely.
Oh, they had more send-ups and Easter eggs than Ready Player One did.
Yes, but they weren't just completely random. They actually had a reason to be there, because they were just characters in the universe. Not just random.
I mean, it's still the end of the game is like you wind up caring more about Thanos than any of the Avengers, and as a result, Josh Brolin just walks away with this film. Anyone remotely familiar with the comics will know ahead of time how incredibly stupid the entire Infinity War storyline turned out to be. But Marvel, to be fair, they had the acting heavyweights and the excellent screenwriting team. They kept Infinity War from turning into a Justice League movie. They walked the line masterfully. They pulled together all the different threads in the best way they possibly could. And yet, I didn't really like it, and I'm not entirely sure why. It's not because of the darker ending, and that's not a spoiler, because again, the ocean of memes should have tipped you off that it doesn't have a really happy ending.
People were screaming for a long time for a Marvel movie that didn't just fit the same cookie cutter mold they were doing,
and they got it.
This absolutely they got their wish completely. This is, I guess, the most subversive Marvel movie, but
it was, and yet that still wasn't the reason I didn't like it. I can't put my finger on it. I
have some theories as to why you don't like it.
I honestly liked Justice League better, which makes no sense.
Wow.
Because Infinity War is objectively the better movie in every possible way. I fully admit that. But I just didn't enjoy it, if that makes any sense.
Okay. I was gonna not bring up DC.
Well, I'm only bringing.
But you already did.
I'm only bringing it up because DC is usually the universe that goes for the darker plots that tends to cram more people in all at once. But this one, you just don't care about the heroes.
I mean, I stopped caring about people towards the end of Justice League. People started getting annoying.
You've never cared about Justice League. Don't even play. Don't even play.
I used to like Batman.
No, frankly, my biggest gripe with this film is the entire cast has this absolute aversion to having their faces covered up, and it's hilarious.
Here we go.
There are no masks in this movie. They're superheroes, but the second they get it, it's like, masks are off. T'Challa's Black Panther mask pops on and off so much that the CGI is just painful, and Thanos, who is literally entirely CGI, it's completely mocapped. He takes off his little iconic hat at the very beginning of the movie and spends the rest of the film just wandering around in all of his bald glory. Iron Man made the mortal mistake of keeping his helmet on too long, daring to cover his face, and the movie rules clearly state no hats. And he gets his helmet beaten off with extreme prejudice as a result of it. No hats allowed in the MCU, man. I don't know why I find this so funny, but I do. You have this army of superheroes who are clearly in it just for the FaceTime. I think it was actually when you first showed me the poster. All these people, and not one of them is wearing like the headgear that's iconic of their character. Nobody is wearing their superhero masks. Nobody. You're running around in tights. Masks are part of the job. Put your hat on. It bugs me.
That's what you liked about Justice League.
They kept their hats. The whole thing wraps up with one big, the end? Question mark? and just kind of leaves you there. Mistakes were made, not by the directors. Mistakes were made by the characters.
That just fits into like the theme.
Thanos, he had a plan from start to finish. That dude, like, if they had made it from his perspective, that would have been. It's a
know if you're gonna go see this movie or not. I mean, it's
don't even lie. You're gonna go see it. It's not like Star Wars. You're like, do I want to see it? Do I not want to see it? You're gonna watch it.
I mean,
it's worth watching.
I hope that
worth watching in theaters.
I hope that if people don't care about the MCU, that they don't watch this, because I don't feel like listening to people talk about how much they hate the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then they say that they still go see this movie.
Why would you bother? Like, at this point, if you're watching this film, it's because you're invested in the previous films. The studio knows that. The audience knows that. It's just a tacit agreement. It's there. Deal with it.
I've talked to enough people that are like that give these movies money because they hate them, but they want to see how they play out.
Ant-Man was stupid. No, Ant-Man is exactly what an MCU movie is. You know what you're getting into. If you're watching Saw 5 and saying, this movie is terrible, why did you watch Saw 1 through 4?
But that's just it. It's like, I don't feel the need to say anything more about Harry Potter. I've just kind of stopped watching it. I've stopped caring. I'm not going to see any more Fast and Furious movies. They're going to keep pumping those things out. I do not care about them.
Fast and Furious 23. This time Vin Diesel drives a motorized version of his own head. Avengers Infinity Wars.
Infinity Wars?
Infinity Wars.
Is that how we're going to say it?
It never ends.
All right. The good.
All right, first of all, the best thing about this film, T'Challa is dead. Let's get that right on the table. Along with like half the universe, he gets killed, which means M'Baku can finally take the reins of command and make Wakanda great again, as he was meant to. M'Baku 2020, get your hats out. He's going to lead Wakanda back into greatness.
He'll put the wall back up.
Period. Full stop. Wakanda's coming back, baby. Side note, that Starbucks joke did not age well considering the huge controversy. Sir, the entire nation is loitering.
There were jokes in there that's it's your number one. I love it. You opened with M'Baku.
M'Baku 2020.
It would have been nice to see a little more of him
M'Baku
fighting. The movie, for me, it juggled a lot of story threads and characters without leaving me confused. Like the previous two Avengers movies, like I thought were fairly impressive for bringing a lot of these larger characters together into a cohesive movie, and then this movie, it doesn't do it in the same way because it doesn't develop all of those characters, but it still has them doing things without making me lost.
That's true.
Like this easily could have just been all over the place nonsense, but it actually paced itself and switched between the story threads.
The other kind of like frivolous good thing I really enjoyed, when Tony Stark blasted that like evil alien space wizard into, well, space, he actually stayed dead. You know, instead of magically displaying powers he hadn't used previously to fly back into the ship. It just gave me a lot of much needed closure from The Last Jedi. It's like, yes, that's what happens.
That's what happens when you get sucked into space. And he had even more reason to fly back into the ship. At least he had wizard psychic powers.
Yeah, the evil space wizard knows that when you get, like, destroyed by explosive decompression, you stay dead. He had the dignity. I mean, in all seriousness, for, like, the best thing about this film, can we just say, like, Josh Brolin 3 times in a row?
Oh, my gosh.
That guy was born to play this role, and he plays the crap out of it.
This is the movie where they absolutely needed to have this villain be the best it could possibly be.
It's true. They have had a whole string of stupid, annoying, or just forgettable villains, but not anymore. Thanos is the big baddie that this universe has been waiting for.
And the thing is, like...
and he delivers.
It was a huge surprise because, like, the odds were stacked completely against him. Like Steppenwolf, he's entirely mocapped. Like the Dark Elves and many other galactic horror villains before him, his motives on paper are simplistic and stupid.
In the comic books, he's a completely one-dimensional character, like the epitome of cartoon villain. There's just no facets to him at all, and they actually gave him a huge amount of depth.
It could have easily been just another, like, stop the giant beam in the sky thing or something like that, but it wasn't.
Like the second Fantastic Four movie where Galactus is just an evil cloud. Oh no, the cumulonimbus of death!
I'm thinking of like a Mario villain or something every time someone says that. I've never seen that movie, so I like what's in my head better than probably what's in that movie.
I mean, we were griping about not caring about the superheroes just because they're all there. They're all trying their hardest to be their superhero-iest, but Thanos is, wow. Like, you're just like, okay, I don't like what he's doing, but I feel for the guy a little bit.
Another thing is, like, unlike more things, like, against him, more reasons why, like, he kind of should have failed as a villain. Like, unlike Vulture or Killmonger previously, because they were, like, relatable, they were these human characters that you felt sympathetic for.
Their impact was still limited.
Yes, like, Thanos, like, how does, like, a giant purple dude from, like, a Titan world, like, how does any of that become sympathetic? And yet somehow, some way, they found a way to just pimp slap all the odds in the face with this giant purple backhand. And thank you, Josh Brolin.
I mean, Josh Brolin has come a long way, too. You start out in your movie career stealing a little girl's bicycle in the Goonies, and then 30 years later, you're killing off half the universe with a glove that somebody stole from Michael Jackson's wardrobe. It's an impressive leap. Good job, sir.
I hope we can keep giving him this praise on into Deadpool 2 Cable.
That would be a fun... If they don't have any references to his other Marvel character...
Oh, they have to. They, like, Deadpool has to make some sort of quip about, like, Purple Guy or something. I mean, he already makes...
Oh, right, wrong movie.
Yeah, he already makes, like, a joke in the trailer about him being so dark that maybe he belongs in the DC universe.
It was, like... Honestly, that's the best reason to see this film. I'm not gonna go as far as saying that he deserves like an Oscar for the role, as I'm sure some people will, and he's definitely not gonna get it. But he does the character really, really well.
And like I said,
he saves the movie
for like a CG character. That's really hard to pull off. It's just
they also worked hard making the CG they rendered him well, like from a computer standpoint. It's not overdone. He doesn't look like a video game. They did it well.
The rest of the characters, I mean, and like the rest of the action sequences in the movie, we said this before, it holds your attention very well. Thanos doesn't take up so much of the screen time that he really is the main character. But so
he's the main character.
It's a good thing though that the rest of the hero characters, when they come together for just They just throw them into these like action set pieces that kind of emphasize the grander struggle that goes on. They pretty much just put that like right off the bat, and it's very, very in line with what would happen in a comic book like this. Like it's just these huge characters doing their stuff, and if you don't already know the movie assumes you already know their shtick. Assumes you already know who these people are, and so it just jumps them into the... And again,
working with like the enormously stupid, convoluted mess that is the Infinity War storyline, like in the comic book, they did the best job you're going to be able to do, so far anyway, unless they just really face plant with the second one. I don't like the story. I've never liked the story. And if you think it's trippy now, hold on to your butts, because I guarantee it's going to get a lot trippier. They did it well.
I'm still looking forward to what happens next. It's
call
me a dweeb.
I'm telling you right now that considering how many iconic money-making characters they killed off, someone's going to find the glove, someone's going to reset the unit. Maybe not find the glove. They're going to find like the cosmic cube or one of the immortal entities. They're going to reset the universe, bring back everybody who died.
We'll see what happens. But if they bring back everybody who died, that will be dumb.
All the people who disintegrated, they're going to bring back.
Yes, that at the end of the movie where he snaps his fingers and half of the universe starts just disintegrating one by one.
They're going to resurrect Gamora, I guarantee you.
They will resurrect all of them.
Loki's probably not even really dead to begin with.
They might resurrect Gamora. I hope Loki stays dead.
I hope he stays dead too, but I guarantee you he's not.
Heimdall's
dead.
Heimdall's definitely dead.
Heimdall dead. Spoiler.
He kind of died, but like Heimdall and Loki, they both kind of died multiple times, didn't they?
Previously? I don't think Heimdall did.
No? Okay.
Like the way he died though had that his death made sense.
Yes.
Loki just, whatever. We'll talk about Loki later. But, and I also have money riding on the prediction that, because like at the end of the film, they kind of leave it up in the air as to whether or not the wound that Thanos has is mortal. Oh, maybe he's dying. But if he dies, I've got money riding on that they're going to bring him back too. And one of the Avengers is going to be like, but Thanos, all life is precious, even yours. Something stupid like that.
All right. Well, we're still talking about good things in this movie. So instead of just talking about the bad things we predict for the next movie,
I'm just making that prediction.
I am going to.
So it's on the record.
I'm going to
Universe
say one more
coming.
thing about the good, unless you have something else to say.
No. Josh Brolin,
Okay.
boom, there it is.
Okay. Because overall, I thought it was a fun movie to watch.
It was.
I
It was.
wasn't bored, and I wasn't like heavily annoyed by anything.
Annoyed by some of the other people in the theater, but the movie was fun.
Oh yes. Oh, okay. I hate reclining seats now. There was a little girl behind me who would not stop playing with it, and it was one of those like busted motors. It was really loud and it was rubbing hard against the upholstery, and she had to start doing it every time the music stopped and people were talking.
The same kid went in. I was sitting in a different row, and the same kid went in and out of the theater so many times. I thought there were multiple 4-year-old children in this theater. Side note, parents, don't bring your kids to see a PG-13 movie. Not because it's scary, not because the content is too mature for them, but just because the kid's not going to get it. He's going to be bored, and you're going to tick off everyone else there. Just stop.
Unless you're absolutely sure that kid's going to fall asleep, and you just really want to bring him for this nap.
Unless you're giving him some edibles, which you shouldn't to begin with.
One more thing that I really love.
And then you have my permission to die.
Giant Dinklage
Sorry,
is best
what?
Dinklage. Giant Dinklage. Peter Dinklage.
That was a nice touch. They get to this big like star refinery, which is kind of cool. It's like a gyro surrounding a star core. And they're trying to build something. It's like, oh, this was made by dwarves. Dwarves are the best weapon builders. You're like, dwarves? What the fudge? He's like, oh, we gotta find a dwarf. Where are the dwarves at? And you're expecting, Lord of the Rings, and this giant Peter Dinklage comes stomping out and starts slapping people around. He's like 3 times the size of everybody else. It's just like, oh, I see what you did there.
It was fantastic. Because I knew that he was cast in this movie. He's like the only new character of note in this movie, or new actor of note in this movie. And when he appeared, it was nice.
Yeah, it's like they said dwarf, and you're like,
nice.
all right, Peter Dinklage, but you weren't
Yeah.
expecting 2-story tall Peter Dinklage.
So, anyways, that's a pretty minor thing. I personally enjoyed it greatly. And we're on to
What was bad
the bad.
about Avengers Infinity War?
There wasn't a clear protagonist. I had this conversation earlier with somebody, and I can debate that Thanos is the protagonist of the film, but
For some reason, they chose to portray him as the villain.
well, that depends on how you define protagonist. Protagonist being the driving force of a story doesn't necessarily have
The
to be a
man is
heroic
trying to
character.
save half of the universe.
Yeah.
Just because he's trying to do it by killing the other half.
And the thing is, I will actually still argue that he is the protagonist, but it's not clear. And the fact is, we jump between so many hero characters so often, they don't feel developed or anchored in any way.
It's true, there's just too many. Like, I get that's the entire point of the film, but right now the MCU is just staggering under the sheer number
But
of supporting characters
they
it's brought
could've-
into its wings.
They could have picked like 2 or 3 to like really
Follow.
stick with, to really follow and let everybody else be the minor characters, rather than
Instead, you just get this really bloated film because they're just packing everything in there. It's like, all right, we got to have Star-Lord. He's got to do something Star-Lord. We got to have Thor. He's got to do something Thor.
Well,
We
the
got
thing
to
is,
have Iron Man.
Those are those little like moments. Those little lines that somebody interjects in like
But
a random
everyone-
speech bubble in the comic.
Everyone gets a moment.
Exactly.
Everyone.
But everybody could have had their little moments while focusing mostly on Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. I'll split it between 2. I'll say
that would have made sense.
That would have made sense, or Tony Stark and Thor.
But
maybe.
instead, it was everybody, and I just stopped caring. And the fact that other people in the audience clearly cared so much made me care even less.
So,
Everyone started clapping when Thor and company show up and like arrive in the middle of the climactic battle, and I'm just sitting there like, I'm pretty sure I know how this is going to end, and y'all deserve the heartbreak that's coming up. If you're clapping in the middle of the movie, you deserve what's coming.
The emotional attachment in this movie doesn't come for its heroes. It's counting on you to bring that with you from previous
playing
films.
the audience.
And that may or may not work for most people. It obviously didn't work for you. It was... I don't know if I would say it worked for me wholly. Obviously, it worked for some people in the audience. It's apparently people near you were, like, crying.
At the end of the film, like, there was the group sitting next to my friends and I. Like, there was... The one girl was having, like, a full 5-alarm meltdown at the end of the film because Loki died. And she's just like... I told him not to do that. You all heard me say, what were you thinking? Why would he do that? And she's just freaking out. I'm like, it's a movie character. First of all, he's probably not even dead. Second, actor's still alive. Third, what are you, 7? No, that kid's been running in and out of the theater a whole time.
Is this how people react when, like, characters in Game of Thrones or Walking Dead die?
To some degree, but then it's a little more warranted because those, they set out to establish an emotional bond, and they do it well over the course of the story, and then they kill the characters off brutally, and they kill them off finally. This one, the emotional bond is completely from the culture that surrounded it because a whole bunch of, like, teenage girls have decided the guy who plays Loki is super hot, and as a result, they just get attached to this character. What's the guy's name? I can't even think of it.
Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah, Tom Middlefinger. And so that's what they're playing off of. They're not playing off the relationship they built in the story. They're playing off the relationship, the meta relationship in the real world with real people. And it's just kind of dumb. And I hate the people that are involved in it. The whole Loki thing. He didn't make Loki-type decisions. He got capped like a punk doing something Thor would do. And the odds are he's just up to more nonsense. He's utterly pointless to include other than to repeat the one iconic line, break the hearts of the teenage girls when Thanos wrings his neck like Raul finally got his hands on one of the Ed boys.
You done? Man, I can't even get a word in. You're so mad about this.
Ed boy! I'm the son of a shepherd.
Back to Ed, and Eddie, huh?
It all comes back to Ed, and Eddie.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back of characters that died, like, when... like, not at the end of the movie, when people just start disintegrating. So, like, Gamora... but she sort of dies in, like, a semi-mystical way, so you can kind of expect
the
her
only
to come
good
back.
death in the film was Heimdall. That was
that
the only...
happened right off the bat, which did, I will say, in
give
a
them
similar
credit.
way...
I will give them a lot of credit because, like, you knew someone was going to die. Everyone was like, oh, who are they going to kill? And they just start offing people, like, in the first 5 minutes. I was like, oh boy, this is going to be a high body count.
Asgardian genocide happens at the beginning of the movie. That's the opener. They kind of pull something similar to, like, what It does, where, like, they kill someone off at the beginning to just kind of leave you on edge for the rest of the movie, even though the rest of that movie they didn't kill anybody.
And if they had proceeded to off the people like that for the rest of the movie, that would have been pretty intense. But instead you kind of get this, like, you get Gamora's mystical, maybe she dead, maybe she ain't, and... like, you get the off-screen death of the Collector, maybe. And then everyone else is just like, oh, will they, won't they? Oh, sand people.
Sand people?
They disintegrate into, like, dust or whatever.
Yeah, they disintegrate into dust. I wasn't thinking sand people, though.
Sand people are easily startled, but soon they will return, and in greater numbers.
I'm gonna veer this into something else I thought was kind of dumb in the movie. So, Thanos' goons. They don't have very much... They have about as much development as the good guys in this movie.
They were the Steppenwolves.
Which means that they are about as one-dimensional as they ever will be. And this is what I thought they looked like. It looked like Thanos hired a D&D party to run stuff for him.
It's true.
Like, you had
the barbarian, you had the
barbarian,
mage.
he's like this big dude with an axe. You had the wizard man who was floating around throwing stuff at people.
Your powers are insignificant compared to mine. You must be popular with children.
You had this, like, warrior, like, demoness chick with, like, devil horns coming out of her. And then you had, like, the goblin rogue. Dude, I thought that dude was like a Skrull at first, and I was like, nope, he's just a space goblin.
Space goblin.
Just hops around, stabbing people, I guess, taking their gold.
I roll to backstab.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, I bet Thanos rolled for their stats after picking up the gauntlet.
All right, I need minions.
So he does like the first Infinity Stone. The Stone of Dice. Stone of Chance.
The Flavor Stone. We're going to take the whole universe to Flavor Town.
There's a lot of questions about characters that people had prior to this movie, like that were in the trailer. Like, oh my gosh, like why is Black Widow's hair? Why is it blonde now? Why isn't it red anymore? Like Cap and Falcon, like where were they during Black Panther? Guess what? Those questions aren't really going to get answered.
My big thing is Scarlet Witch, man. What I have always hated her character, even in the comic books. And this film doesn't change that, because what is her power? What does she do?
She does mystic stuff, man.
Because
she's
weird. It just constantly changes depending on what the screenwriters need. She's a whole grab bag of bad decisions and undisclosed abilities. It's like, oh, does she push things with her mind? Does she direct energy at it? Does she make explosions? I mean, does she change probability? No one knows.
I didn't have a problem with her because, yeah, it doesn't focus on her. We never really know what she does, but she's never, like, too powerful. Like, she doesn't become a Doctor Strange level character.
But they give the hint that she could if she wanted to, but she doesn't, except when she has to. And you're like, what? Give me some parameters, man.
I guess, yeah, that's fair. I don't know, maybe it just doesn't bother me because she's pretty good looking.
This is true.
Floats around.
Forget Mary-Kate and Ashley. This Olsen sister is hands down the best. My biggest issue with this movie is just that so much of the plot hinged on convenient stupidity from the Avengers. I mean, it was bad enough we got the "I can't do it, I love you too much" scene like 3 times with all different people. Or, you know, the multiple scenes where the Avengers just caved the second the big baddies threatened to kill somebody. But they just got selectively retarded whenever the plot needed to advance. Like, for example, how do we separate Thanos from the Gauntlet? Well, you could have Doctor Strange open a portal just as Thanos is lunging forward and close the portal, severing his entire forearm, like they showed him doing earlier in the movie with a different character. But nope, let's wrestle with an overpowered psychopath and see if we can pull his glove off. Or that part where the Wakandan army is up on the hill in front of a choke point behind force field capes with laser guns, and they decide to just charge down the hill and sacrifice their advantage so Black Widow can look cool kicking people. Why?
Because it looks cool.
Sir, we have the high ground. Screw that.
I can't get mad about any of this stuff because The Last Jedi exists.
Rian Johnson, you have ruined movies forever.
But it doesn't break the story.
It doesn't break it.
Wholly.
No.
And like I said, it looks cool enough while it's happening that you can kind of forgive it. And the thing is, they come up with creative things. Sure, they didn't sever his hand with a portal, but they still came up with a plan that involved all the characters.
That's true.
In some creative way. Like, they use, like, Mantis's power to, like, soothe people's minds and that kind of stuff.
She did
like,
put a whole planet to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they came up with something creative, unlike whenever every decision that happened during The Last Jedi.
I think the reason it was a problem is because it kept happening. Like the love thing happening in triplicate. They just kept doing it. And it's the culmination of all the selective stupidity that just got kind of irritating after a while. It's like, really? Again?
It did keep happening, but it happened with different characters and it fit with a theme.
That's true.
The theme, Thanos brought whole like life and death thing. His whole shtick is like, I want to bring balance to everything. He has this vision that, you know, he kills like half of a planet, then there will be enough food to go around for everybody. And he's constantly brings these decisions to people where he's like, look, are you willing to like make this hard decision to like kill somebody to get what you want? And it happens over and over again with different characters and how they react to it.
So the big caveat is like all of our complaints with this movie have mitigations because none of the bad stuff is actually that bad. as much as we gripe about it, it's one of those things where even the bad stuff is still pretty good, especially considering what they had to work with. Do you say that's fair?
Yeah. I keep going back to like some of the more absurd comic books that I've read, and like like specifically stuff that happens like even in the cosmic realm or whatever.
If you go back and read
they get so just bonkers and out there, but I still have a fun time reading them, and that's kind of how I feel about this movie.
If you go back to like the old Thanos, the old Infinity Wars jibber jabber, before the Infinity Gauntlet, the big thing to have was the Cosmic Cube, and there's people have been digging up the comic panels. And everyone was apparently just dropping this thing constantly. Oh no, I've dropped the Cosmic Cube, the most powerful thing in the universe. Oh, now I haven't. Just everybody, left and right.
I thought that's what the Tesseract was supposed to be.
I thought that too, but I'm guessing they're going to whip it out for defeating him because now he's got the all-powerful gauntlet. I have the all-powerful cube.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, you did point out that the like axe that they made was actually Beta Ray Bill's weapon.
I will be so happy if they introduce Beta Ray Bill. For those who don't know, Beta Ray Bill is Thor, but he's a horse.
He's like a humanoid horse person. He's got like a full horse head.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
He's Thor with a horse head, and his hammer is actually an axe. I don't know, but it's pretty weird. I mean, they made Rocket Raccoon a thing, so they can do Beta Ray Bill.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. My last bad is the music is still not memorable.
That's true.
This is something that's been a constant across all Marvel movies, but considering this is like the big moment, I was expecting the theme to kick up a little more and to pull up a little more emotion with Symphony.
There is no Avengers theme. There is. There is. If you
There
held a
is
gun
an
to my
Avengers
head, I could
theme.
not hum it for you.
There is an Avengers theme. It was very prominent in the trailers. That's why I thought maybe they would pull it up a little more in this movie, and they would kind of use that to an advantage.
Especially after the great job they did with the score on Black Panther. It's kind of a step down.
Yeah. There was a little bit of that, actually, when we swapped to Wakanda. And it would have been so cool if there was more of that, if there was more distinct themes jumping between characters. But that's something that they kind of messed up on, early on. So there's not really any changing that. But the Avengers theme itself, or at least some kind of score, could have been something to bring a lot more emotional weight to the events in this movie. I think so.
It's a fair point.
Symphonies, they have power in a film,
And the Marvel movies don't have a whole lot of that power.
Unfortunately, no.
So, Dan, what would you say was ugly about Avengers Infinity War?
So this is kind of a broad thing across a lot of movies, but I'm getting tired of CG, the way it's being used.
It's true. It's like we're watching an animated movie.
I kept thinking during the final battle of Infinity War, just that I kept thinking of the two towers, and I kept thinking of Mad Max Fury Road, and how much more weight the violence in those movies had,
it was
because
actually,
there were real things.
That was something
them.
A friend of ours said. He's like, I find older horror movies scarier because the effects, they had to use real stuff, and so it's a little bit creepier.
Right.
Whereas new stuff, it's just animated, and so you just don't really care. Because although you can do a lot more CGI, it loses some of the weight.
Now, this movie, it's still entertaining, but it's also colorful and obvious. It's hard to feel anything out of it, and this movie really needed to make you feel.
And there was also some, I don't want to say there's CGI mistakes, but there was some points where it feels like they were kind of phoning it in. Like every time Mark Ruffalo's head popped out of the Hulkbuster armor, it looked like it just kind of copied and pasted it onto a green screen. It's like, oh, look, you could be literally any YouTuber right now.
Well, that was because he couldn't have his head covered, remember?
It's true. No hat.
That mech that he's riding in, that's basically a hat now.
That's one giant hat. Get that hat off of there. Take its arm off. Beat him in the head with it. He doesn't deserve to have a hat.
That was the ugliest thing that I can... There's one more thing, but I want you to get one in first.
First of all, let me say, a PG-13 movie is allowed to say the F word once.
Let the man have his F-bomb.
Samuel Jackson is essentially famous for saying the F word. The after credits bonus scene has him getting ready to say the F word, and then he disintegrates before he can deliver it. And it's just wrong. It's wrong.
It's disappointing.
I don't support profanity, but let the man do his job.
That would have been the perfect note to end on, too, if he had let it out and then disintegrated. And then not have panned to that little beacon thing.
Ugly move, Marvel.
Ugly
move.
Summoning a character that none of us care about yet.
I got my superhero pager.
Yeah, really? Like, what? I mean, I get it. Captain Marvel is the next movie, and they're reminding us of that, but nobody really cares about Captain Marvel yet. She's not been established as an interesting character
Nobody
yet.
has ever cared about Captain Marvel, ever. It's a statistical fact. The character literally exists to troll DC Comics. I'm not even kidding. Like, DC bought out the original Captain Marvel. He was a character back in the 30s because he was more popular than Superman. They bought him out, and they bought the company so they could just get rid of the character. Well, then they let the copyright lapse, and so even though Captain Marvel was a character, the name Captain Marvel Comics took it for one of their comic books. And the terms of their copyright agreement said they had to keep producing at least one book every 5 years, I think it was, with that title to keep the copyright. So they kept this stupid character alive for 45 years just to piss off DC.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've heard this story so many times. He's so mad. I think the character only exists to troll Lewis. I think that's what it is.
It's true.
I have no emotional attachment to this character either way. I hope that Captain Marvel is a good movie, just like I hope all movies are good.
I hope it's a good movie.
Their big female superhero debut film.
They need their Wonder Woman.
Yeah, they do need it. So hopefully this Carol Danvers,
Black Widow ain't it.
Hopefully this Carol Danvers is it. Because if it's not, that means we gotta pull out all stops. We gotta bring She-Hulk in. That's what it means.
Or it is 2018.
What?
Tony Stark could get a gender change.
No.
Tanya Stark,
No.
let's go. 2018, no room for your bigotry, Dan.
I mean, I guess it's like an infinite universe thing. Doctor Strange pulls Tanya Stark in.
No infinite universe. Tony Stark is like, I'm a woman now. Changes nothing, keeps the goatee, but refers to himself as her. But you talk about the pager. The other big thing that bugged me. For the love of Buddha, why does Tony Stark have a freaking flip phone? Seriously.
Flip phones are bae.
That bothered me more than anything else in this movie. That guy has a computer built into his skull, and he's rocking a flip phone? Might as well just write Cap's number on a freaking super secret Rolodex card.
Was it supposed to be like a satellite phone?
No, it was just it looked like something your grandpa would use. Grandpa,
that's the only explanation.
The buttons are big enough for me to see them. I'm never using anything else.
Maybe it was a satellite phone, or Disney was sticking it to cell phone providers because they refused to throw a lot of money at this scene. Maybe that's why. They were like, screw you Apple, screw you Google, screw you Samsung. Guess what we're going to do? A flip phone. That's what you get.
F the world.
Which,
But what would you say was the ugliest thing of all? This whole movie. The ugliest. Bar none.
So Gamora, Thanos kidnaps Gamora. They go to this snowy world, and this shadowy figure shows up. And I thought, oh man, are they gonna bring the embodiment of death? Are they really gonna do this where he falls in love with death?
Hold on, a little backstory. In the comics, Thanos is dating Death. Not figuratively. Death has a physical form, and he's actively trying to seduce her by killing people. In the comic books, that's his motivation. No grand plan of balance or altruism. He's like, that Death is one hot piece of bony skeleton.
I was still thinking that might be the case, but
that would have been probably a little too much.
Yeah, they probably made a good call there.
But instead, what did we get, Dan?
Oh my god. We got Red Skull is back.
Out of nowhere.
Just on this planet. And it's not even Hugo Weaving playing the Red Skull. Why? They could have had just another nondescript. They could have been just the cloak. No face. Just this shadowy figure telling him this stuff. There was no reason for it to be Red Skull, and he looks ugly. He sounds ugly, because once again, it's not Hugo Weaving, and it's a CG thing. It's not even a dude in makeup anymore. Just... why?
Hey, you remember that guy that Captain America killed in his very first movie? He's back.
The whole thing made no sense. It was really bothering me, because I liked Hugo Weaving's Red Skull. I think that was probably like one of the better earlier villains that Marvel did.
They could have
not that he had a whole lot of depth. I mean, he was just kind of a Nazi supervillain, but
they could have even pulled it off if they had him deliver all those lines as like this, like you said, like a floating robe. Like, oh, who is this guy? And then as they're leaving, like he turns his head slightly, and you can see part of the Red Skull. That would have had the internet going nuts for years.
Oh yeah,
and that would have been so much better than just like, who are you? I once tried to get an Infinity Stone. Look what happened to me. It was rough.
That
Dan cried.
Hurt me a little bit. That's when I cried, not when everyone died.
I mean, to be fair, like I heard some of the Hugo Weaving did not like the character or the role, so he wasn't really interested. But
yeah, I guess it was just out of respect for him. Technically, they could have just said, "No, you're under contract. Come here and do this one scene." But
he just shows up, delivers all of his lines in a flat monotone, and refuses to do any better. Well, that's it. We're going to go ahead and get a voice actor. Screw you. Maybe that's what happened.
Avengers Infinity War. The quest for the Thanos genocide.
I give it 4 out of 5 Infinity Stones. I guess there were 6, weren't there?
Yeah, but there's 5 fingers. That keeps confusing me. That really did.
How many stones are running around? Where's the flavor stones?
There's 6 of them, but it's on a gauntlet. So you'd think one for, but no. There's like one for each finger, and then there's like one that goes in the middle.
You know what else bugged me is like the slot in the middle was really big, but the stone that went there was the same size as all the rest. And I was like, why the big slot for it?
Little things, man. Little technical details. Whatever.
I mean, at the end of the day, Avengers Infinity War takes an incredibly one-dimensional villain from a pretty stupid comic book crossover storyline, and they do some pretty great stuff with it.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, they absolutely had to. Like, they had been building this up for so long. If he wasn't amazing, I don't know, Marvel kind of would have had what's coming to them.
But they
succeeded.
I wish the Avengers had used their brains a little bit more, but then it wouldn't be a 2 or 3 part story, I guess. And that's kind of what bugs me the most. I feel like they're just milking it, but I would say definitely go see it. The odds are good you already have. If you haven't, it's worth the money.
I'm going to include all 6. I'm going to say 4, and then like one of those like partly shattered Scarlet Witch ones. Yes, so 4.5 out of 6.
Before Thanos pulled a
the time one. That was good.
What's the name of the butt controversy girl?
The time one. Tracer. Freaking Tracer. He pulled a Tracer with the Doctor Strange stone.
At least he didn't have a Cockney accent. That would have been insult to injury. You what, mate? I swear on me mom. It's a good movie. You should check it out. It's worth the money. Are you pumped for Solo, Dan? I was kicked out of the academy for having a mind of my own. No! Close my door, Mom.
Get the tentacle monster out of space. Why? I don't like it. Why is the Millennium Falcon does a barrel roll and slaps the TIE fighter?
I know what you really are.
I don't
a
want
bad actor. I don't want to see the Solo movie. I want to see Dan see the Solo movie. Join us next time. Solo. It's going to be great. Avengers Infinity War.
Avengers Infinity War is not dead on arrival. Solo will be. My prediction.
I've got a magic glove. I'm going to kill the world.